So, to any new F1 fans out there, here's a few things to expect. Mercedes will win pretty much everything, Renault gets salty every time people realise how rubbish they are, and Red Bull will keep finding new ways to over their young drivers. Unless you're Max Verstappen, of course. Like, I'm not even kidding. The Red Bull team has been around since 2005, and in that time, they've killed more careers than Romain Grosjean has front wings. Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to FP1. And given the recent rumours about Alex Albon being replaced by Sebastian Vettel for 2021, yep, I'm as shocked about that as you are, I thought it would be interesting to just look back at the other aspiring careers that Red Bull have thrown out onto the pavement since its junior team began all the way back in 2001. Just before I do get into things though, just want to thank everyone for all the recent support on the channel. Like, last week we saw the biggest growth in the last 8 years, and we are so close to 1,000 subscribers now, but yeah, honestly, the support has been incredible, guys, so let's keep pushing as we go into the rest of the 2020 season. But anyway, let's get into Red Bull's history of killing junior talent. So, a few things to start off then. Just researching for this video kind of shocked me as to some of the names that were on this junior team at one stage. So, for example, current Formula E driver Neil Yarny, to Ferrari Junior and F2 driver Callum Ilott, and perhaps most strangely, the cucumber himself, Narain Karthikeyan, back in 2004. Like, can you imagine that in some kind of alternate universe somewhere, our man Narain could have been a race winner, or dare I say it, a world champion for the Red Bull team? Now, that's a scary thought. The other thing I want to make clear before we get underway is Red Bull's management, and rather ironically, despite telling so many drivers to f*** off in the last 20 years, the majority of these, at the top at least, haven't changed. Christian Horner has manned the role as Red Bull's team principal back from their first entry into the sport in 2005. Then you've got the ever-smiling Austrian Helmut Marko, who acts as the company's advisor for driver development. And finally, you've got Red Bull co-founder Dietrich Mateschitz. But more on these guys later. Right, with all that exposition out the way, let's get into things. So, in the early years, Red Bull didn't really have the star-studded status that it has now, and as a result, a lot of the drivers were, well, to put it nicely, a load of shit. That said, there were a few exceptions, and I don't mean Narain here. Now, three-time Porsche Super Cup champion Michael Ammermuller was part of the junior team from 2004 to 2007, and even acted as the team's test and reserve driver in that final year. That season, however, would see Ammermuller sit out the GP2 campaign due to an injury, and those literal lack of results was enough for Helmut Marko and Dietrich don't give a shits to tell them, your time's up. Off your Ammermuller proved to be a race winner in several categories after his Red Bull exit, and although it's impossible to predict how an F1 campaign would have gone, he couldn't have done much worse than the likes of Christian Klein and Scott Speed now, could he? For Red Bull though, this was just the start. Around this time, Red Bull were putting all their money behind this guy called Sebastian Vettel, a man who would apparently go on to win 4 F1 world titles and also take the record for spending the most track time facing the wrong way. Okay, but in all seriousness, when Vettel was promoted to F1 in mid-2007, a seat would open up in the Formula Renault 3.5 series. This ends up being taken by fellow Red Bull junior Robert Wiccans. Now, Wiccans would stay with the junior team until the end of the 2009 Formula 2 season. Now, this was a tricky year for Wiccans, who was plagued by unreliability and bad luck throughout the campaign. Yet, despite that, still picked up 2 wins, 5 poles, and finished second overall in the championship. So that's good, right? Well, not good enough for don't give a shits here. Helmut Marko would call Wiccans into the room and quite clearly say, you didn't win, so get out of here. Wiccans nearly made it to F1 with the Virgin team in 2010, but anything more than a test role sadly failed to materialise. Even so, the team probably wouldn't have been able to accurately showcase Wiccans' talents, which were evident just from looking at the start of his debut season in IndyCar in 2018. Unfortunately, an accident at Pocono would result in Wiccans sustaining injuries, putting him out for the rest of that season. But let's now jump back to 2009 and meet Antonio Felix da Costa, a young hotshot who had dominated the Formula Renault 2.0 series, taking 9 wins out of the 14 rounds. Fast forward to 2012 and Felix was signed up to the Red Bull Junior Academy, who would fund his racing career and leave some money aside for the ever-growing amount of drivers' graves in their back garden. Da Costa would come third in the 2012 GP3 series, then win the Macau Grand Prix that same year. 2013 would also prove fruitful, with Da Costa taking third in Formula Renault 3.5 and scoring some impressive results along the way. As a result, rumours began to circulate that a 2014 seat at the Formula 1 team could really be on the cards, and he'd even tested for the team at this point, and so the step to F1 looked pretty much certain. However, Red Bull had other plans. At the same time, another young gun called Daniel Kiveat was starting to make waves, winning the GP3 series and catching Marko and Horner's eyes. Soon enough, they were tipping the young Russian as the next Sebastian Vettel, which, in one sense, wasn't wrong. But god, that does sound funny saying that now, doesn't it? Kiveat ends up being promoted to Toro Rosso to partner Jean-Eric Vergne for 2014, leaving Costa stuck in DTM and Formula E instead. Unsurprisingly, in December 2015, Costa ended up being shown the door by Red Bull, and even now he's regarded as one of those drivers that never really got that F1 shot he deserved. Kiveat's rise to power would also mean the end for his 2014 teammate Vergne. When Sebastian Vettel decided he wanted to win a championship for Ferrari, a seat was left open at the senior team in F1. Now, Kiveat wasn't doing a bad job at this time, but Vergne was proving to be the better driver, ending the season with more than double the Russian's points tally. However, don't forget here, Kiveat's a world champion in the making, so subsequently he's going to get the promotion and Vergne just gets booted out the Red Bull program altogether? Eh? This, for me, has to be one of Marco's strangest drops. I mean, Vergne had a successful F1 career to this point and proved his mettle later on in Formula E, becoming the first double and back-to-back world champion in that series history. Jev did nearly make a sensational return a few years later, but we'll get on to that soon. In the meantime, let's get back to Kiveat, who would partner Honey Badger Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull for the 2015 F1 season. And, in fairness, this season really wasn't half bad. Though Red Bull would have a shocker of a season, being beaten by Ferrari and Williams, Kiveat would be able to get the measure of his experienced teammate Ricciardo, narrowly outscoring him to 7th in the championship at the end of the season. He would also pick up the team's and his best finish of that year, with 2nd at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and consequently he was swiftly retained for 2016. However, in the background here was the rise of F1's next big name, a young guy called Max Verstappen. Max would have a fairly successful debut season for Toro Rosso in 2015 and quickly was turning heads at the likes of Ferrari and Mercedes. The way Red Bull saw it was if they didn't pounce on him, they could lose him for good, which, when you consider the fact this kid was 17 at the time, that wording really doesn't sound great, does it? Moving on, Kiveat would have a good start to the 2016 season, taking the team's first podium of the campaign in China, though this race would also be remembered for...
You came like a torpedo.
That clip kind of is funny looking at now, isn't it? Though Kiveat was actually applauded for his bullish driving style at the time, it was the events at the next race in Russia that he didn't really receive as much credit for. On lap 1, Kiveat would hit Vettel not once, but twice, in an incident that would also cause damage to teammate Ricciardo's front wing, compromising his strategy as well. This is where Marco, Mateschitz and Horner all really saw their chance. Within a few days of the Russian GP weekend, news broke that Kiveat had been demoted back to Toro Rosso as to be replaced by the young gun Max Verstappen. And Max would come out all guns blazing, with Red Bull giving him the superior strategy to win at the next race in Spain. Kiveat would spend the next year and a half trundling around in the midfield before being booted from the team altogether at the back end of 2017, with team boss Franz Tost claiming that both parties had lost trust in each other. Now, admittedly, Kiveat had made some silly errors since returning to Toro Rosso, but that car was also far from reliable, and many of his retirements were also due to mechanical failures, so it really wasn't all his fault here. Kiveat would be replaced by Frenchman Pierre Gasly, and yeah, we'll get onto him in a minute, but Red Bull now found themselves in a bit of a predicament. Toro Rosso's other driver, Carlos Sainz, had been loaned to Renault to replace legend of the sport, Jolyon Palmer, and add to that, Marco's fetish at telling young drivers to f*** off left Red Bull searching for a new driver. This is almost what allowed Jean-Eric Vergne to make his sensational return to the sport, but instead just led to Kiveat being awkwardly recalled for one race in the US Grand Prix, after which he was dropped again in favour of Kiwi Brendon Hartley. Now, Hartley had been part of the Red Bull Junior team back in 2010, but like many before him, was showed the door due to poor performance, and probably for this abomination too. By Hartley's debut in 2017, he'd gone on to become champion twice in the World Endurance Championship and also pick up a win for Porsche at Le Mans. His F1 campaign, however, would be less successful. Plagued by misfortune, mechanical failures, and admittedly some mistakes of his own, Hartley managed just 4 points over 2017 and his full season in the sport the year after. Subsequently, he would find himself dropped once again from the Red Bull team. And while we're on the subject of 2018, let's just go back to the messiah himself, Max Verstappen. Now, even hardcore Max fans will have to admit here that the start of this season was, well, nothing short of shit. Max spun out of contention at the Australian Grand Prix, threw away a race win by teaching Sebastian Vettel the art of spinning in China, and then put himself out of the Monaco pole position contention with an unnecessary crash in FP3. Now, if Verstappen fans want to try and defend him for these incidents, I've got some advice for you. Go yourself. This start of the season was way worse than that of Kiveat only a couple of years prior, and though Max did pull things back at the end of that year, it's surprising to know that there was never really any consideration by Red Bull to demote him at this time. Now, maybe this was due to the fact that neither Toro Rosso driver was particularly setting the world alight, but it's still interesting. Anyway, Verstappen's teammate Ricciardo would eventually get fed up with the team politics at Red Bull and so announced a move to Renault for 2019. Because, yeah, there won't be any team politics over there, will there? Either way, this led Red Bull to promote Pierre Gasly to partner Lord Verstappen for the 2019 F1 season, and I think we all know how well that went. From his crashes in testing, the F1 critics were on Gasly's back straight away, and in my defence, I did defend him at the time. That video sure aged well, huh? Red Bull would also stress that they were fully behind their second driver, with team principal Christian Horner stating that our intention is to leave him in the car until the end of the year. Well, that was a fucking lie. 6 days after that interview, it was announced that Gasly would be replaced by Alexander Albon for the remainder of 2019. The Thai driver had also been previously dropped by Red Bull in 2012, but was signed on to Toro Rosso for that year, again due to Red Bull having no other options at the time. And so that takes us to present day. Toro Rosso, now rebranded as AlphaTauri, fields 2 Red Bull rejects in the forms of Daniel Kiveat and Pierre Gasly, while though Max is signed on to the senior team until 2024, Albon's future appears less certain. Current paddock gossip suggests that Helmut Marko wants to bring Sebastian Vettel back home, which means ditching Albon for 2021, despite him doing, in fairness, a pretty good job, and even better if it wasn't for the attacks from #blessed. Add to this the 2 Red Bull juniors in F2 right now. You've got Yuki Tsunoda and Jehan Daruvala, and then don't forget Sete Kamara and Vips in Super Formula. And the AlphaTauri boys better watch out before their designer clothing gets replaced with rags as they're thrown out onto the street outside Milton Keynes. So who really knows what this season has in store next, but the Red Bull driver situation is definitely one to keep an eye on going forward. So if you did enjoy this video, then do consider liking and subscribing for more content just like this. And yeah, like I said, we are so close to 1,000 subscribers now, so if we can hit that soon, I'd honestly be over the moon. But yeah, let me know what you thought down in the comments. I do try and read and respond to all of them. But yeah, with all that out of the way, hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I will catch you all in the next one.